So Northwestern concludes a 10-win season with a 24-23 hard-fought win over Kentucky at the Music City Bowl. We bring in Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football to help us break down the game, one that went right down to the wire. So, Kevin, you're not doing so well tonight. We're looking for that Wildcats' first bowl victory in quite some time and almost got a comeback victory.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but we've talked about this before. It's the seems to be the life of a Kentucky football fan. Heartbreak and losses, close losses over and over. It's like, at one point during the game tonight, the Kentucky football Twitter account said something to the effect of, "Dear football gods, whatever we've done to you, we're sorry. Can you make it stop?" or something like that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was, considering the way the game went, I thought Northwestern would probably win by a touchdown, maybe even more. You know, just a heck of an effort by the Cats. Just, there were some things that happened during the game that I'm sure we're going to talk about. And to be that close at the end and have a chance to win it, it's pretty good. Against a 10-win, Northwestern team is pretty good. You never want to talk moral victories, and but they had their chances. It just didn't work out in the end.
So anytime you review a 24-23 game, you can go to a number of turning points, but I think there were three. And so we'll start with the 2-point conversion selection by Kentucky. So down most of the second half and down by 10 points once there was the pick six thrown with, I don't know what there was, 6 or 7 minutes left to play, something in that range. But getting a field goal and then stopping Northwestern on another play that could certainly, and another play call that could certainly be questioned. Northwestern going for it to try to seize the game and ice it right there with about 2 and change left at their own 40-yard line on a fourth and about a half a yard. But Kentucky takes over right there, drives right down the field, scores the touchdown with about 45, 50 seconds left in the game. And so it's 24-23. So you either score and you give Northwestern some time to be able to try to get into field goal range, but most likely you're looking at overtime. It's probably a 75% chance you're going to overtime, 25% chance you lose the game, but you're down by 1, so you can kick the PAT and go to overtime, or you make a play call to win the game right there.
Yeah, you can go back and look on my Twitter page. As soon as Kentucky scored, I said, if it's me, I kick the extra point and go for the overtime, because
I do too.
I mean, I felt, and it was about 50-50. There was, a lot of people said they thought it was great that they went for 2, even though they didn't get it. But like I said, if it's me, I kick the extra point. I thought at that point where Kentucky got the field goal, then held them on the 4th and 1, and then scored, I thought if it goes into overtime, Kentucky has momentum. I liked, the Wildcats from the SEC's chances. But, Stoops, they talked about it. Some of the players talked about it after the game, that pretty much for the entire month, they said if this situation came up, they were going to go for 2. So that it sounded like it had already been decided, back in practice a couple of weeks ago. That's where not having Benny Snell, we'll get into that. I think really hurt on that 4th down play. They could have run run the Wildcat with Snell or the read option and probably could have scored. But like I said, if it was me, I would have kicked the extra point and taken my chances in overtime. But
sometimes
I'm not a coach.
You go for it with a 2-point play, and you can tell that they've got a really well-designed play that's difficult to defend. I don't know that there was anything but a bunch of pass routes being run in the end zone. It didn't look like there was any type of exotic concept there to free anyone. Just a number of wide receivers, 2 or 3 on each side, and just threw it out there, and it could have been caught. It could have been taken in for the touchdown. It wasn't as though it was just a completely botched play, because the receiver did have an opening there and may have got a fingernail on the football.
Yeah, it was Taven Richardson, I think, was the player Johnson was throwing towards who didn't catch it. That's one of those plays, they have like Kayun Ross, who's 6'6". Do you kind of throw towards the corner of the end zone and just, a jump ball kind of situation? But yeah, I mean, it didn't, if that's kind of what they had drawn up, it didn't seem like, I don't know, like they had practices for a couple of weeks. I'm just going to say it. But, you know, like I said, if Stoops, if they get it, Stoops a hero, and everybody's, you know, going to love him for who knows how long. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. So, you know, 7-6, you know, second straight 7-6 season, second straight year with a bowl, you know, a bowl appearance. And, you know, from where we've talked about this before, from where Stoops started, you know, 5 years ago to where he is now, where the program is now, it's, you know, it's night and day. And, you know, they have a really good recruiting class coming in, and they have some players to replace. But, I think Kentucky fans honestly would be happy. I think 6, 7, 8 wins a year and making, making a bowl game, whether it's Music City or, maybe occasionally you get that 8-win season and go to an Outback Bowl or something. But anyway, back to the play. It didn't seem like it was not that they drew it up like, in the dirt like you did in the sand lot, but don't know. Like I said, if it works, you're a hero, and it didn't, so you're the GOAT.
Yes, that's the way it works in sports. Taven Richardson, especially when you go for the gusto and don't make the safe play, but go for the gusto. And had they made the 2-point play and held Northwestern, well, then everything works out well and everybody gets the pat on the back. Taven Richardson, I see, had his best day of the year with 5 catches for 89 yards, including a 37-yarder. And it could have been a great day for him. He could have caught the game-winning 2-point play as well. But he'll be back for his junior season. So let's back it up to the Benny Snell play. He only had 6 attempts rushing at that point in the game. So I saw it from a number of angles. It doesn't appear as though there's really anything to read into this other than there was a rushing play to the right. He gets thrown down, and he's getting up, and the official made some kind of gesture toward him like he was lending his hand to help Benny Snell, and Benny Snell was okay with just getting up on his own strength. And the official, all of a sudden, as he was already kind of lunging into Benny Snell, he was the one who was leaning into Snell. Snell kind of just put his hands on him, and all of a sudden there's a flag thrown, and he's ejected.
Yeah, that's pretty much, what happened. And the thing about it was, if you watch that play, and it looked like there should have been an unsportsmanlike conduct or, late hit almost on Snell on that play. So not only did Kentucky not get the penalty on that, they end up getting their best player ejected on what was, by all accounts, seemed like a bogus call. Like you said, you pretty much nailed it. It's like the referee, his name's Chris Coit, by the way. Not that, True Blue fans are going to remember that name. It's going to be like John Higgins now, the two refs. Yeah, it was like he almost looked down like he was reaching down to help Snell up, and Snell just kind of pushed him, not really pushed him away, but just kind of put his hands up and said, this is what he said after the game. He said, I don't need your help. I can get up. And the official took that as, I don't know, some kind of gesture, and just threw the flag, and then tossed him. And it was, the most, one of the most bizarre things I've seen. And I've watched a lot of football. It just made no sense. And it just, at that point, just took all the momentum, away from Kentucky. And, Northwestern, I think, went on, scored like 17 unanswered, after that. And of course, and that was, just a few minutes before, Thorson, Northwestern's quarterback, got hurt, on a trick, did a trick play, pitched it out to running back. He runs around the end and throws back to the quarterback. He got tackled, by Jordan Jones. It didn't seem like anything bad, but, obviously, a knee injury, they think it is. I think he's supposed to have an MRI tomorrow. So, like in the span of about 10 minutes, you had, Northwestern's, really good quarterback and Kentucky's, star running back out of the game. But I don't know. It made no sense. And it's another one of those, Kentucky Kentuckyisms. It just weird stuff just seems to happen. So
yes, a quarterback by the name of Mike Alviti relieved Clayton Thorson, and by the looks of the play that I saw him throw it, let's see, 4 of 8, he was absolutely no threat, and certainly that hampered Northwestern's productivity. But on the other side, Benny Snell, after just 6 carries, he's lost early in the second quarter after he contributed heavily to the opening drive touchdown for the Wildcats. So they're up 7-0, and they're down. I believe it was maybe 7-3 at that point, or they were down 10-7 at that point to Northwestern. And injuries are part of the game, so it's unfortunate Thorson goes down, but Benny Snell, that was completely uncalled for, and there was no reason for that. One of the best players in the game, and it was noted a number of times during the broadcast that Benny Snell accounted for a higher percentage of offense, 33% for Kentucky, than any single player for any team in the SEC this season.
Right, yeah. I mean, he was, you look at his last 5 games, he rushed for almost 800 yards and 12 touchdowns. I mean, Steven Johnson had a shoulder injury, which, got re-aggravated tonight. That's another play we could talk about. Kind of forcing Kentucky to almost become almost a run only, not quite run only, but probably 75, 80%, running the ball. And then, they just give the ball to Benny, and he just ran with it. Like I said, almost 800 yards over these last 5 games. And, his injury forced, Kentucky, they had AJ Rose and Siam King, who both of them did, a fairly good job filling in, but, nobody's, there's not too many people that's going to be able to replace, Benny Snell. You take him out of the lineup like that, and it forced Kentucky to be, just kind of flip the script and be a almost total, passing team, the rest of the game. And then they were doing it with, Johnson, he has re-injured his shoulder. He got hit on a play, well out of bounds, got hit near the sideline, and the guy took him on out probably about 3 or 4 yards down the side, towards the bench. And, no flag was called on that, but yet Stoops, kind of raised his, disapproval or whatever, and somehow Kentucky ended up with the penalty, on that play where their quarterback got hurt. So, somebody had said tonight, okay, Kentucky's best player, offensive player, Benny Snell, gets knocked out of the game because of a penalty, and then the quarterback gets hurt, and basically Kentucky ends up with a penalty on both those plays. It's like, how does that make any sense? Like I said, Johnson went out for a little while. They brought in Drew Barker. They said Johnson was not going to be back at all, but he came in back in the second half and, scored 2 rushing touchdowns. So I think he ended up with like 247 yards total, passing for the game, in his last game, as a Wildcat. So it's just, the Jeff Pecoro, who does the UK radio broadcast, he said at one point, this is the most bizarre game I've ever seen. that seemed like a good way to describe it, because then there was another a targeting penalty on Northwestern's linebacker. I can't think of his name right now. One of their best players, and he got ejected for a targeting penalty that was in no way, I didn't think, was even close. So
yeah, Patty Fisher, he's their leading tackler.
Yes. Right.
And so you had, all sorts of the top players on both teams, either by injury, ejection, out of the game when the game was decided. Right.
And it's, it's bad that it happened that way, but it's the nature of the game sometimes. The referees, the way things are called, it just seems to happen. It seems to happen more and more. But like I said, I won't get on a UK tangent, because then we'll start talking about John Higgins again, and we don't want that. But anyway.
Well, Steven Johnson finished up his career, as you mentioned, 247 yards passing, 19 of 36. He threw the 2 interceptions, the one very costly, the second one, the pick 6 that made it 24-14, although Kentucky obviously was able to drive it for the field goal, get the turnover on downs by a very questionable call by Pat Fitzgerald to go for it. That's one that I certainly would not have made. Kick it, play defense. Your defense is playing well. Kentucky's not exactly rolling up mounds of yardage at that point, and there's only 2.5 minutes left on the clock, and you make them go the length of the field. But anyway, so Steven Johnson, plays his last game. I don't know if is there a much anticipated quarterback battle coming up this spring, or is there somebody in particular that seems to be in place, or is it Drew Barker's? Because obviously we've seen him as the guy in the past.
Well, I think from what a lot of people think, the quarterback in waiting has not arrived on campus yet. Terry Wilson, the junior college quarterback from out in Kansas, sign with Kentucky in this new December signing period. He's rated as the #1 dual threat quarterback, in junior college. He was originally, committed to Oregon 2 years ago coming out of high school. The thought is, Drew Barker's still here. You have Gunnar Hoke. You have, Danny Clark, who was at one time an Ohio State commit. Those guys are all going to be, that's going to be one of the big things to watch in the spring is how the quarterback situation shapes up. Like I said, I don't think Wilson is coming here to sit on the bench. Now, whether he's the starter, come September, we'll see. But I think for sure by the end of the year, he will be Kentucky's quarterback. Like I said, you have Wilson, you have Barker, and then you have Hoke, and you have Clark. So you have four guys. So there's definitely going to be some competition this spring.
All right, Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football joining us to break down the Music City Bowl. Northwestern over Kentucky, 24-23 on a failed 2-point conversion with about 45 seconds left to play. The Wildcats should finish in the top 15 in the nation at 10-3. The Wildcats of the SEC, 7-6 after a 4-4 SEC slate. I'm looking at their non-conference slate coming up here in 2018. Nothing to write home about Central Michigan, Murray State, Middle Tennessee, or the games out of conference other than the Louisville game, obviously, to conclude the season. All right, Kevin, we appreciate the breakdown. Thanks for jumping on board. Kentucky falls to 7-6, but hopefully sometime soon there will be a postseason victory for the Commonwealth.
We certainly hope so. And thanks, Mark, for having me on as always. Appreciate it coming on. Enjoy talking college football with you. And yeah, hopefully Kentucky will try again next year. Maybe that next year will be the bowl victory. It'll be the first one they've lost, I guess, 4 in a row now. So the last win was the Liberty Bowl after the 2008 season.
All right, Kevin, we will see you next time.
All righty. Thank you.